Alright, what's up guys? It's Kevin from the Kevin Chronicles. Happy Monday, and today I'm here to start officially the mini-series on one of my favorite subjects, watches. Alright, let's get it. Alright, so I've been collecting watches ever since I was a kid with my dad. So we've pretty much collected everything under the sun, from different brands of watches to pocket watches to regular wrist watches. At this point, my daily wear is actually a Rolex Submariner. So you guys can see that right there. Rolex Submariner is what I usually wear every day. But as part of this mini-series, I wanted to start it out first with Watch 101. So what parts make up a watch? So as you guys probably know, watches can be very expensive, ranging from a few $100s to even a few $100,000, even into the millions if you get into some of the crazy rare watches that they sell at like Christie's auctions. So on average, most individuals, when they end up having a huge success at work or come into some money or a huge success in life, a lot of people end up buying watches and actually spending quite a bit of money on those watches, considering Rolexes. Even when you get some of the lower costing Rolexes, they're still $8,000 to $10,000. So if you're gonna spend $8,000 to $10,000 on a watch, then you need to know kind of some of the parts that belong in that watch, just so you can be educated and sound educated. Essentially, if you're explaining something to someone or if something's broken on the watch, you need to be able to point out what part it is, not exactly know what's wrong, but at least be able to say, maybe there's an issue with the bezel, or maybe you wanna get the dial changed, or maybe there's an issue with the crown, or what powers a watch. So today, I'm gonna go over all of that with you guys. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability, or point you in the right direction of talking to somebody who can. So make sure you go ahead and put those questions in the comments. All right, so we're gonna get started. All right, so essentially there's two different type of watch movements, and I'll get into what a movement is in just a second, but there's a quartz movement, which is powered by a battery, and then there's an automatic movement. And basically an automatic movement means that as you wear the watch and move your wrist, the watch is gonna essentially wind itself in order to have power. So the gears are gonna develop power stored in them, and then eventually that power is going to be released over time. I'm not saying that you have to sit there all day and shake your wrist, but just the normal wearing of your watch should be able to give the gears the wind up that it needs in order to power it throughout the day. Now, movement has essentially a bunch of small parts and gears, and that's the brain of the watch. They all come together and work together in order to power the watch, as far as running maybe the chronograph, which I put an example in the video, or running the day date. For you, those of you that are not familiar, the day date is the little date, and I put an example as well I'm showing you right now. It's a little date in the center of the watch. So that's basically what the movement does. It's the brain of the watch. It controls the watch. It allows you to set the time of the watch and keep the precision of the watch. So that's basically what the movement is. Now the next part of the watch that I want to talk about is the crown of the watch, and I'll go ahead and show you that right here. So the crown of the watch, as you can see that, and it's not because it has the Rolex crown. The crown of the watch, and I'm showing you an example right now, is basically where you can unscrew that piece, and attached to it is a stem. That's what goes into the watch, and then the crown is the outside kind of fatter part that you put your fingers on. Now basically those two parts work together in order to either change the time of the watch, or you can poke it in a little bit farther and it'll change the date of the watch. So basically, if you've ever held a watch before and you unwind that crown, there'll be the first setting which you can change the date, and then you pull it out a little bit farther and that changes the time and moves the hands of the watch. So the next part of the watch that I'm going to talk about is the bezel. Basically the bezel, as you can see right here, is this black part around the watch. Now basically when you're talking about a bezel, those are very important, not only for a decorative piece, because some people get jewels and diamonds and things like that put around them or change the colors, but in reference to my watch, it's very important because my watch is a dive watch, and divers actually use the bezel to see how long they were underwater, because the bezel actually moves around the watch. So as you can see, it's straight up and down right there, right over the 12, the number 12. But if I change it, or rather if I move it, I can twist it, as I'm twisting it right there, and now it's over the 5. So if you see that, then you can go, okay, maybe I only want to go over, or only can go underwater 25 minutes. So I have that set right there. So as soon as I see the long hand or the minute hand on that 25 minutes, then I know that I need to come up for air or change my tank or whatever I need to do, but I need to come up to the surface. So that was the main use for the bezel. Now bezels come two ways. The newer models, like my watch for example, my watch I purchased in 2016, they come with a ceramic bezel. Now ceramic bezel is a basically poured type of material. It's not like the old ways, which you'll see a lot, especially if you look at older high-end watches, the bezel was painted on. Now with painting, of course, you know, it starts to fade and crack and sometimes even scratch. Ceramic, that doesn't happen. Well, now the crystal, as you see, like I'm pointing it towards the window so you can kind of see that reflection. The crystal is basically the lens of the watch, or it's that clear piece that separates the watch from any dirt or debris. It separates the dial so you don't get anything on it, any scratches. Crystals, some can be very sensitive, so you have to be careful. You can't be knocking it around, but as you know, of course, over time things have developed and you can do a little bit more with watches. So if you accidentally like bump into something, it's not a huge deal. But you got to make sure that you keep the crystal clean, you wipe it off, and you don't get any scratches on it, because one, it could affect the value of the watch, and two, you know, nobody wants a big dig or crack in their crystal, and it's very expensive to replace. The next thing I'm going to talk about is and I have an example I'm going to show you guys, but I'll show you on my watch, is the dial. If you see the black part with the numbers, they're rather symbols, but they represent numbers around the watch. The point of the dial is not only decorative, but is for the markings or the numbers to be placed so you can essentially see what time it is. So dials can get crazy, especially in Rolexes. They can do different colors. They can do with jewels and diamonds around the dial on the numbers. Sometimes there's symbols, depends on the watch manufacturer. Sometimes there's symbols like this watch. Sometimes they're numbers. Sometimes there's only symbols because the numbers are on the bezel. It all depends on the watch, the design of the watch. So you can definitely get pretty crazy with your dial. That's one of the ways that you can kind of show your uniqueness and your creativity, is getting a different colored dial. I definitely don't recommend changing the dial in higher end watches, or at least if you do, I would make sure that you keep the original dial so you can put it back on the watch. A lot of people, when they buy watches secondhand, they want that original watch. They don't want the upgrade, and if they do want the upgrade, they still want the original watch, just, you know, for whatever reason. They want that originality. They want to make sure it's all genuine, because there are, you know, fake parts out there and parts that may or not be as high as quality as, for example, Rolex in this case. So I also want to talk to you guys about just basically the main holding of the watch right here. So the band kind of got in the way. So you see the main housing of the watch right there, where they put the movement, where they put the dial, the bezel, everything kind of attaches together. So that's known as the case. Now, along with the band, which we'll talk about in a moment, the case can also be made out of different materials as well. More rare is titanium. Pretty often, more likely than not, it's going to be stainless steel, but there's also gold watches available as well. And the gold, make sure when somebody says a gold watch, make sure that you check what carat value the gold watch is. So it could be a 10 karat gold watch, it could be a 14 karat gold watch, it could be an 18 karat gold watch. And make sure, especially when you're buying antique watches, like from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, that you're checking if it's a gold watch, fully gold, or if it's a gold filled watch. Now there's a huge difference, because a gold filled watch is usually poured over a different type of metal. So say for example that your watch, it weighs an ounce of gold, but it's 14 karat. In comparison to 24 karat ounce price of $1,300 or whatever it is at that time, at 14 karat, your watch and scrap value is only worth, $600 or $700. It's not worth the full scrap value or the full value of a 24 karat ounce gold bar. So I know that sounded a little long-winded, might have sounded a little arbitrary, but regardless, make sure that you understand that a 14 karat gold watch is less than an 18 karat gold watch, and a 10 karat gold watch is worth less than a 14 karat gold watch, and at the bottom is a gold filled watch. So that's all you need to remember for that. So basically the case houses all of the mechanisms and the dial. The bezel connects to it, the crystal connects to the bezel. So the case is the holding dock. It is basically the head. If we're talking in human anatomy, it is the head of the watch. So it holds the brain, which is the movement, of course, and that's the case. So the final thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is the band. So as you guys can see right here, this is the Rolex band. So these parts, the band is also known as the bracelet. Now, obvious reasons, it goes around your wrist, you wear it like a bracelet, but you see these smaller parts right here. See these right here, the breaks in between them. These are actually called links. They're called the links of the bracelet. I want to talk about those because a lot of people have different size wrists. So they basically remove the links. That's why they're all the same size, but they're removable. As you can see, the little screws right there. You see those screws? Yep, right here. Sorry, excuse me. So you see the screws right there. Now you have to be careful with the links. They can be very valuable depending on the material that they're made out of. So if they're made out of gold, they can be incredibly valuable considering at this point, gold is almost $1,300 an ounce. So you gotta make sure, especially when you're buying a high-end watch, that you make sure that all the links are there if you're buying a secondhand watch. Now there's usually anywhere from like 12, 13 links in a watch. Some can be more, some can be less. You'll have to check with the manufacturer. It's especially important when you're buying a watch from somebody with a smaller wrist and you have a bigger wrist. If they don't have the links for the watch, then you could be out of luck because the watch won't fit you and then you'll have to go and repurchase the links. So the best thing to do is make sure when you're buying a watch secondhand is to ask, hey, does this watch come with all the links, or how many links are in this watch? Because they're supposed to come with 13, 14, 15, whatever it's supposed to come with. So make sure you check on that. All right, so I want to thank you guys so much for watching the first episode of this mini series, Watch 101, getting a basic outlay of all the different watch parts that are on the watch. So you have the crown, the bezel, the dial, the crystal, the case, the band with the links. I know that sounds like a lot. Make sure you watch it twice, 3 times. I'm just kidding, you don't have to do that. But if you guys have any questions, make sure you comment below. Make sure you like this video and make sure you subscribe to my channel. I hope you guys have an amazing week and have an amazing day. Thanks.